I never thought my family could humiliate me in such a brutal way. On Halloween Day, I had set a table meant for celebration with every detail perfect, every plate prepared with care. Yet, when the moment came, I was left sitting in silence, surrounded by untouched food abandoned by the very people I trusted most. My name is David, and for years I have been the one in my family who tries to keep everyone together. I believed that loyalty was what mattered most, that if I put love and effort into my family, they would return it. I was wrong. Let me tell you who these people are, because this betrayal cuts deeper when you understand the bonds we shared. My mother Linda is the woman who raised me with kindness and taught me that family is sacred. My father Frank is stern, but always preached honor and responsibility. My brother Mark is the golden child, the one who always seemed to shine a little brighter in their eyes. My sister Karen has always been protective of me, the one I could lean on when times were rough. My son Jason admires me more than anyone else in the world, and my daughter Allison carries the gentlest heart you can imagine. Then there is Grandpa Walter, the man who gave me my sense of loyalty, who told me stories about family bonds that should never be broken. On that Halloween day, every single one of them chose to walk away from me. While I sat in my dining room waiting, believing we would share laughter and stories while we passed candy around the table over a meal I had poured my soul into, they were all gathered at Mark's house. My table was full of food. Their chairs were empty. My hands shook as I tried to eat alone, the humiliation clawing at me with every bite. But as painful as that betrayal was, nothing could have prepared me for the knock at my door. It was not my family returning. It was my lawyer carrying a folder that would expose a truth darker than I ever imagined. The afternoon of Halloween began like a dream. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, landing in golden patches across the counters where I had spent hours preparing food. I wanted the day to be perfect, not for me, but for everyone I loved. For weeks I had been planning the dinner writing lists and imagining the way laughter would fill the house. I believed this gathering would be a moment we would all look back on as a reminder of what family truly meant. I started with the centerpiece. Small pumpkins and black and orange candles stood tall in the middle of the table, their carved faces and flickering light opening like a promise of the night. Around them, I placed a fine china, the kind my mother Linda always admired when she visited. I polished the silverware until it gleamed. Linen napkins were folded with precision. Every detail was chosen with care because I wanted my family to feel honored, cherished, and celebrated. The menu was ambitious, but I was determined. The ham roasted in the oven until its glaze shimmered under the heat, shaped and scored, so it looked like a jack-o'-lantern face under the oven light. I made deviled eggs the way my sister Karen loved, decorated like little eyeballs, and sprinkled with just enough paprika to give them color. I prepared roasted carrots with honey, knowing my father Frank liked simple dishes with strong flavors. I baked 2 pies, 1 apple and 1 pecan, because my children Jason and Allison could never agree on which was better. Jason always went for the pecan, and Allison's sweet tooth was tied to the apple pie's cinnamon sugar, and I cut the crusts so they looked like spider webs and little pumpkin faces for Halloween. I thought about them constantly as I cooked, smiling as I imagined their faces lighting up when they tasted the food. Grandpa Walter was in my thoughts too. He always told me stories about how he and Grandma had kept the family together through difficult times, and I felt that same responsibility. Hosting meals was not just about food, it was about keeping bonds alive. Even as we all grew older, busier, and more distant. In the weeks leading up to Halloween, I made sure everyone knew they were expected. I called my mother to remind her. She said she could not wait to see what I had prepared. I spoke with my father, who replied in his usual gruff tone, "Just make sure there is coffee. You know I do not function without it." Karen promised she would bring a basket of chocolates for the kids for trick-or-treat night. Jason and Allison helped me pick out black and orange decorations and little plastic pumpkins, and their excitement filled me with pride. I wanted them to grow up knowing the strength of family tradition. Even Mark, my brother, had confirmed. He told me over the phone, "Do not stress too much, David. We will all be there. Just enjoy yourself." Hearing that eased my worries. Mark had always been the favored son, but I did not hold it against him. I wanted him at my table because I believed that no matter how people saw us at the end of the day, we were brothers, and that bond mattered most. As I moved around the kitchen that afternoon in Columbus, Ohio, I felt anticipation building. I glanced at the clock again and again, counting down the hours until everyone arrived. The smell of food filled the house. Warmth and pride filled my chest. I set out mugs for warm, spiced apple cider instead of glasses for mimosas, and I arranged the fruit tray in a perfect circle of Halloween colors. I paused at the doorway to take it all in. The table looked beautiful. The food looked flawless. For a moment, I imagined the sound of my family walking through the door, removing their coats, greeting each other, hugging me. I imagined Jason and Allison laughing with their cousins Karen, teasing me about fussing over details, and my parents sitting together at the head of the table, smiling as though nothing in the world mattered more than this meal. I held on to that vision because it was what I wanted more than anything. There was something about this Halloween that felt important. Maybe it was because we had not all been together since the 4th of July, and even then it had been rushed and chaotic. Maybe it was because I could feel my parents aging, their voices slower, their steps less steady. Or maybe it was simply because I had been longing for unity, craving the comfort of belonging. Whatever the reason, I poured my entire heart into creating this dinner. As the clock moved closer to evening, I dressed in my best shirt and tie. Jason wore the sweater I had bought him for school, and Allison twirled in her yellow dress, her hair tied with a ribbon. They both looked at me with excitement, ready to welcome everyone. "Dad, do you think Grandpa Walter will bring his old camcorder again?" Jason asked. "Of course," I answered, smiling. "He never comes without it. We will probably end up with a whole album from today." Allison tugged at my hand. "I cannot wait to give Grandma Linda the little pumpkin I painted." "Do you think she will like it?" "She will love it," I said, pulling her into a hug. "She will love you even more for thinking of her." The children's excitement added to my hope. It was not just my vision anymore. It was theirs too, and that gave it weight. I wanted the day to be proof that even though life pulls us in different directions, family always finds its way back together. At that moment, everything felt right. The house smelled of food and warmth. The table was set for love and laughter. My children were glowing with anticipation. I believed that in just a few minutes the door would open and the people I trusted most would walk inside. I believed that this dinner would remind us all of the bond we shared. I believed that Halloween would mark a new beginning for my family, one built on togetherness. I did not yet know that the vision I clung to so tightly was already broken. While I stood in that perfect room waiting with my heart wide open, my family had already made their choice, and it was not me. The first sign of trouble was silence. By the time evening arrived, the house was still empty. I checked the clock again, convinced that someone would knock on the door any second. The small pumpkins and black and orange candles stood tall in the center of the table. The ham was perfectly glazed, carved with a jack-o'-lantern face, and the deviled eggs were cooling on their tray, little Halloween eyeballs staring back. Everything was ready, yet no one had come. I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. Nothing. Not even a quick "running late" or "on our way." That struck me as odd, because my mother Linda always texted when plans shifted. She hated leaving anyone waiting. I called her first. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. "Hi, Mom. It is me," I said into the phone, trying to sound calm. "Everything is ready. We are just waiting for you guys. Call me back when you can." I hung up more puzzled than worried. Maybe she was driving. I tried my father next. Frank's phone rang twice, then cut to voicemail. His voice played back to me in that clipped, stern tone I had heard all my life. I left a message urging him to let me know if they were close. I told myself it was just traffic people out for Halloween. Families ran late all the time. My sister Karen was probably still wrangling her kids into their costumes. Mark might have overslept, as he often did, and the rest of the family was waiting on him. I tried to relax, but the quiet of my house pressed down on me like a weight. Jason and Allison fidgeted at the table, their eager smiles starting to fade. Allison leaned toward me. "Dad, do you think Grandma forgot 'No, sweetheart'?" I said quickly. "They are probably on their way. You know how Grandpa Walter always drives slow." Jason crossed his arms. "But they should be here by now." I forced a smile, though my chest tightened. "Sometimes people run late. It is fine," I said out loud, though it was not fine. I paced between the kitchen and the dining room, checking the driveway for cars that never pulled up. The food began to lose its warmth. The pies no longer filled the air with their sweet scent. Every minute of silence chipped away at the confidence I had felt earlier. After half an hour, I called Karen. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I called Mark. Same result. One by one, I tried every number again, and each time I was met with silence. By then, my hands were trembling. The excuses I had told myself earlier no longer made sense. It was not traffic. It was not delays. Something was wrong. I stepped outside to get some air, my phone still in my hand. That was when my neighbor, Mr. Miller, walked by. He waved at me casually, then slowed down when he saw my face. "Everything all right, David?" he asked. "I am waiting for my family," I replied, trying to hide the frustration in my voice. "We had a big Halloween dinner planned. They should have been here an hour ago." Mr. Miller tilted his head. "That is strange. I could have sworn I saw them all earlier. Big group carrying dishes and baskets. They were heading into Mark's place. Cars lined up the street. Looked like quite the gathering." His words landed like a punch to the gut. For a moment I could not even speak. My throat tightened as my mind raced. He must have been mistaken. Maybe it was another group, but deep down I knew he was not wrong. I forced a weak smile. "Oh, maybe they stopped by there first." Mr. Miller nodded, waved again, and walked off, leaving me standing in the driveway in Columbus, Ohio, with my world spinning. I went back inside, and the house felt colder than before. The small pumpkins and black and orange candles no longer looked like a promise of the night. They looked like decorations for a party that no one cared to attend. Jason and Allison were whispering at the table, their small voices carrying the same confusion I felt. "Dad, why would they go to Uncle Mark's?" Jason finally asked. I sat down heavily, staring at the plates I had set. "I do not know," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I really do not know." The humiliation crashed over me in waves. Every detail I had planned now mocked me. The polished silverware, the folded napkins, the pies that were meant to make my children smile. All of it was meaningless. My family had chosen Mark. They had promised me they would come, but when the day arrived, they gathered at his house instead. I tried calling again, desperate for an explanation. No one answered. Not my parents, not my sister, not even Mark. The silence became unbearable. My children's eyes searched mine for reassurance, but I had nothing to give. I finally told them to sit down, and we ate alone. I filled their plates with ham and carrots, poured them juice, and tried to pretend it was just another meal, but with every bite I felt my pride unravel. The food that I had prepared with love tasted bitter in my mouth. As Jason chewed quietly and Allison pushed her food around her plate, I felt my heart harden. I had always believed that family was unshakable, that no matter what happened, they would be there. That belief was crumbling in front of me. The very people I had spent my life trying to please had left me behind without a word. I stared at the empty chairs, at the plates that would never be touched, and a single thought burned in my mind. They abandoned me. Not by accident, not by mistake, but by choice. And while I sat in that silence, trying to swallow the bitterness of betrayal, I had no idea that my humiliation was only the beginning. A knock at the door was coming, and with it the revelation that Mark's betrayal ran far deeper than pulling my entire family away from me on Halloween afternoon. The sound of the knock startled me. It was sharp and deliberate, echoing through the silence of my empty house. For a brief second my heart leapt. I thought maybe my family had realized their mistake. Maybe they were about to walk through the door with awkward smiles and flimsy excuses. I rushed to the entryway, half hoping to see Linda carrying her little pumpkin from Allison or Frank grumbling about traffic and crowds from trick-or-treaters. But when I pulled the door open, it was not my family at all. Standing there was my lawyer, Mr. Collins, holding a worn leather folder in his hands. His face was serious, his posture heavy with the weight of something he did not want to say. "David," he greeted me quietly. I frowned, caught completely off guard. "What are you doing here today?" "It is Halloween." "I know," he said, his voice steady, but this could not wait. He held the folder up slightly. "You need to see this." Behind me, Jason and Allison peeked around the corner, their faces still shadowed with disappointment from the empty chairs. I gestured for them to stay in the dining room, then stepped aside to let Mr. Collins in. He walked into the living room in Columbus, Ohio, and set the folder carefully on the coffee table as though it contained something fragile and dangerous. "What is this about?" I asked, sitting down across from him. My tone was sharper than I intended, sharpened by the sting of my family's betrayal. Mr. Collins met my eyes. "It is about Mark." The name hit me like cold water. Mark had already stolen my Halloween afternoon, pulling the entire family into his house while I sat alone with my children. Hearing his name now made my chest tighten with anger. "What about him?" I asked. Mr. Collins opened the folder and turned it toward me. Inside were pages of documents neatly clipped together. The first sheet showed a credit card statement with my name printed across the top, but I had never owned that card. My brows furrowed as I flipped to the next page, then the next. Loan applications, bank accounts, even a mortgage approval, all under my name, all signed in handwriting that looked eerily familiar. I stared at the papers, disbelief rooting me to the spot. "What is this supposed to mean?" "It means," Mr. Collins said carefully, "that your brother has been using your identity. These accounts, these debts, these signatures, they trace back to him. We have been investigating quietly for weeks. Today I had to tell you because it has gone further than we expected." My hands trembled as I flipped through the folder again. Every page was another betrayal layered on top of the one I had already suffered that afternoon. It was not just that Mark had taken my family away from me for Halloween. He had been taking pieces of my life, forging my name, building a false image of himself while tying my future to debts I had never agreed to. I pushed back from the table and stood pacing the room. "This cannot be real. Mark would not do this to me." "He would not risk destroying my life like this." Mr. Collins' expression did not waver. "I know this is hard to accept, but the evidence is solid. He has been using your name to secure loans. He has been opening accounts and living off resources that do not belong to him. If we do not act, the consequences will fall on you." I stopped pacing and stared at him. "Why are you telling me this now? Why today?" "Because today, you needed to know the truth," he said firmly. "I did not plan the timing, David. But maybe fate did. Look at what happened this evening. Your entire family gathered at Mark's house while you sat here alone. Does that not tell you where his influence has reached?" The words cut deep. I thought of my mother, my father, my sister, my children, and my grandfather all sitting in Mark's living room while my table sat untouched. They were not just choosing him socially. They were orbiting around him, blind to what he was really doing. And I was left in the shadows, the easy Mark whose identity he could steal without question. I sat back down and rubbed my face with my hands. My voice was raw when I finally spoke. "What do I do?" Mr. Collins leaned forward. "You fight back. We can build a case. We already have documents, witnesses, and evidence that ties these accounts to him. But I need you to be ready. This will not be simple, and it will not be clean. Your family may not believe you at first. They may think you are trying to drag Mark down. You need to be strong enough to stand against all of them if it comes to that." The thought of facing my family filled me with dread. I could already picture the looks of disbelief on their faces, the way they would rally around Mark the way they always had. But as I looked at the folder in front of me, my humiliation burned away and hardened into resolve. "I will not let him take my life," I said firmly. "Not after today. Not after everything I have worked for." Mr. Collins nodded. "That is the decision you need to make. If you are ready, we will take the next steps." I closed the folder and pressed my hand against the leather cover. The weight of it felt heavy, but it was nothing compared to the weight of betrayal already sitting on my chest. This evening I had believed my family had abandoned me out of carelessness, choosing Mark's house over mine for reasons I might never understand. Now I saw the truth. They had not simply chosen him. They had been pulled into his orbit, manipulated and blinded while he stole from me in secret. I stood up straighter, my jaw set. The dinner was over, but the fight was only beginning. My humiliation had turned into anger, and my anger into determination. Mark thought he could steal my identity, my reputation, and even my family. He thought he could leave me broken and silent. But I was done being silent. The folder sat on the table like a loaded weapon. My hand shook as I opened it again, scanning the pages with growing disbelief and fury. Each line carried my name, my signature, my information, but none of it had come from me. Loans totaling over $50,000. Credit cards maxed out a mortgage I had never signed, and Mark's handwriting, disguised but unmistakable, scrolled across the bottom of page after page. For years I had been the brother who lived quietly, who carried the weight of family traditions, who cared for my children without asking for much. Mark had been the one who soaked up the spotlight, who always had something bigger, flashier, more impressive to show. Now I saw the truth. He was not building a life out of success. He was building it out of my name. The rage inside me burned hot, but beneath it was something colder. Fear. If I had not seen these documents today, my life could have been destroyed in silence. My credit ruined. My reputation shattered, my children forced to carry the burden of debts that were never mine. The thought twisted my stomach. I clenched my fists and turned to Mr. Collins. "How long has this been happening?" "For nearly 18 months, he replied, his voice calm but firm. "We traced the earliest account openings back to early last summer. At first, it was small things. A credit card here, a line of credit there, but over time it escalated. Larger loans, bigger purchases. We only discovered the full scope when a collection notice was flagged under your name. That was when I knew we had to act." I shook my head, my throat tightening. And the whole time he was smiling at me, calling me his brother. The whole time he was looking me in the eye and lying. Mr. Collins leaned forward. "He is not just lying to you. He is lying to everyone. To your parents, to Karen, to your children. They all think he is the one holding the family together. Meanwhile, he has been stealing from the very person he is tearing apart." I thought back to that evening, the empty chairs at my table, the laughter spilling across the street at Mark's house. My humiliation now had a darker meaning. He had not simply pulled them away out of pride or selfishness. He had been hiding them from me, surrounding himself with the very people who should have been by my side while he stole my life piece by piece. Jason and Allison crept closer, curiosity pulling them toward the living room. Jason's eyes fell on the open folder. "Dad, what is all that?" I shut the folder quickly and looked at my children. "It is something I need to fix," I told them. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded. "You do not need to worry about it. Just know that your father is going to make things right." Allison tilted her head, her little voice soft. Did Uncle Mark do something bad? I swallowed hard. Yes, I admitted. He did. Their eyes widened, confusion flashing across their faces. To them, Mark was the fun uncle, the one who always brought big gifts and stories that made them laugh. Telling them the truth was a cruelty I never wanted to inflict. But I could not shield them forever. They deserved honesty even if it hurt. I sent them upstairs to play, then turned back to Mr. Collins. What do I need to do? He placed a steady hand on the folder. First, we gather more evidence. We will get statements from the banks, confirm the signatures, and tie the accounts directly back to Mark. Once we have everything, we will confront him legally. But you need to prepare yourself, David. Your family may not take your side right away. They will believe him because he has always been their golden child. You will be painted as the bitter brother, the one trying to tear him down. Are you ready for that? The words stung because I knew they were true. My parents had always favored Mark. My father admired his confidence. My mother doted on his charm. Even Karen, who had defended me in the past, often gave Mark the benefit of the doubt. If I accused him without proof, they would turn on me. I could already hear Frank's booming voice, "Stop trying to drag your brother's name through the mud." I could see Linda's eyes filling with tears, whispering, "Why would you do this, David? Why would you attack your own family?" But none of that mattered anymore. The evidence was in my hands. I could not stay silent. Silence would mean letting Mark strip away everything I had built, everything my children depended on. I straightened my shoulders and met Mr. Collins' gaze. I am ready. Whatever it takes, I will fight him. He can have their attention. He can have their praise, but he will not have my life. Mr. Collins nodded, his expression firm. That is the resolve I needed to see. We will move forward. At that moment, the humiliation I had felt earlier transformed into something sharper. The empty chairs at my table no longer symbolized my weakness. They symbolized the cost of blindness, the cost of trusting someone who had been cutting me down in silence. I walked back into the dining room and looked at the table one more time. The small pumpkins and black and orange candles were beginning to sink and burn low. The food had gone cold. The plates sat untouched, waiting for people who had chosen to abandon me. But I no longer saw them as reminders of failure. I saw them as the last meal of the man I used to be. The man who stayed quiet, who accepted scraps of affection while his brother stole everything. That version of me was gone. In his place stood a man ready to fight, a man ready to reclaim his name, his dignity, and his future. I closed the folder with finality. Mark had taken enough from me. Now it was my turn to take everything back. In the weeks after Halloween, my life became a battlefield. What had begun as humiliation over an empty dining room turned into a war for my name, my dignity, and my future. The folder Mr. Collins placed on my table was no longer just a collection of documents. It was the proof that my brother had taken more from me than I ever imagined. I filed reports. I signed statements. I sat across from bank officers and investigators who raised their brows at the forged signatures and said things like, "It is clear someone has been impersonating you." Each word was another confirmation that Mark had used me as his shield. He had lived his life boldly because he was hiding behind my identity. When I confronted my parents with the evidence, the room filled with disbelief. Linda clutched the papers with trembling hands, shaking her head again and again. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not Mark. He would never do this." Frank's face turned red, his jaw tight. "You expect us to believe that your brother, our son, would commit crimes against you? This is madness, David." Their denial cut deeper than I expected. After everything I had endured, I had thought the truth would open their eyes. Instead, it only made them retreat further into their faith in Mark. He had been their pride for too long. They could not accept that the son they adored was capable of betrayal. Karen stood in the corner silent, her eyes darting between me and the papers. I could see the conflict in her face. She wanted to believe me, but she also wanted to cling to the brother she thought she knew. She finally spoke, her voice quiet. "If this is real, then Mark is not who we thought he was. But if it is not..." She did not finish her sentence, but the implication was clear. It was my children who gave me strength in that moment. Jason looked at me with wide, steady eyes, and Allison gripped my hand tightly. They did not care about Mark's charm or the image he projected. They believed me because they had seen the truth on Halloween evening. They had sat beside me at the empty table waiting for people who never came. They had seen the way the folder shook in my hands. For them, there was no doubt. "Dad would not lie," Jason said firmly, his voice carrying more conviction than I had ever heard. "Uncle Mark is the liar." Hearing those words from my son gave me a sense of clarity I had been missing. My children were watching me. They were learning from how I handled this betrayal. If I crumbled, they would remember a father who was broken by deceit. If I stood tall, they would remember a father who fought back with dignity. So I fought. The legal process was long and exhausting. Mark denied everything at first. He called me jealous, bitter, and desperate. He said I was inventing lies to ruin him. He charmed my parents into believing his every word. For a while, I felt like I was shouting into a storm that drowned out my voice. But Mr. Collins kept pushing, and the evidence kept stacking up. Signatures were matched. Transactions were traced. Witnesses came forward who had seen Mark using my name. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself began to crumble. The day he was finally exposed was not the triumphant victory I thought it would be. Instead, it felt heavy and somber. Mark sat across from me in that courtroom, his eyes full of defiance, but beneath it I saw fear. When the judge declared the evidence undeniable, I felt no joy, only sorrow. This was my brother. This was the man I had grown up with, the one I had defended countless times, the one I had invited into my home. He had stolen from me, and in the process, he had destroyed the family he claimed to love. In the aftermath, relationships fractured. My parents struggled to accept the truth. For months, they avoided me ashamed and confused, clinging to the hope that Mark would somehow redeem himself. Karen finally admitted she had seen signs over the years, but had chosen to ignore them. That admission hurt almost as much as Mark's betrayal. But through it all, I found something stronger than anger. I found resilience. I realized that family is not defined by blood alone. It is defined by loyalty, honesty, and the courage to stand together. Mark had betrayed those principles, but my children had upheld them. Jason and Allison never wavered. They stood by me even when others doubted. On the anniversary of that Halloween, I set the table again. This time it was smaller. Just me, Jason, and Allison. The small pumpkins and black and orange candles were fresh, the food simple, the laughter genuine. As we ate, I realized that I no longer needed the approval of people who could not see the truth. I no longer needed to prove myself to parents who refused to accept reality. What I needed was right in front of me. 2 children who believed in me, who trusted me, who loved me unconditionally. That day, I made a promise. I would never again pour myself into relationships that drained me. I would never again allow myself to be defined by someone else's shadow. Mark had stolen my identity, but he had not stolen my strength. He had not stolen my will to fight, and he had not stolen the love I shared with my children. The lesson was painful but clear. Sometimes the greatest betrayal comes from the people closest to you. Sometimes the family you spend your life protecting becomes the very force that breaks you. But in that breaking, you discover what cannot be taken. For me, it was resilience. It was truth. And it was the bond I shared with Jason and Allison. I no longer see Halloween as the day my family abandoned me. I see it as the day I found my strength. The day I stopped chasing approval and started building a future that could not be stolen. And when I look at my children, I know one thing for certain. They will never forget the lesson their father taught them. You can survive betrayal. You can survive humiliation. But you must never let anyone steal your voice. That was my story. It was not easy to tell, but it was real. Halloween was the day I sat at a table set for love and found only silence. The day I discovered that betrayal can wear the face of your own brother. But it was also the day I chose to fight back to protect my children and to reclaim my life. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of what family can mean and how painful it is when that trust is broken, I ask you to do one thing. Make sure no one else sits alone the way I did that day, and stand by the people who truly value you. Hold on to the ones who fight for you, not the ones who tear you down. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you found this story powerful, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment about your own experiences with family and betrayal. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more stories that reveal the truths we often keep hidden, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. Until next time, take care of yourself and never let anyone steal your